Thank you for the promotion. I'm Chief Medical Officer. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm pleased to be here. I'm a co-founder of Juvenescence along with Jim Mellon and Greg Bailey. Those two are the ones who put the company together and is raising all the capital. I'm the one who kind of spends it. But we are ambitious. We can have a meaningful impact on health in the context of longevity. As you heard this morning, aging is a disease. And we see that we want to embark on investigating the mechanisms in longevity, learning from what's going on around us, but also looking to solutions because we're a drug development company. We're raising capital. We've done quite well so far, thanks to Jim and Greg, and thanks to some of the investors in this room. And we want to get on with the job. Now, I'm a physician. I qualified a long time ago, and looking around the room, I could be the oldest person here, which is scary. But I'm involved in this because I think it's a huge medical and societal need. And what was really of concern to me was when I saw the statistics that, of course, we've done well. We're living longer, 30 years longer than a century ago. And that was usually due to public health measures, infections control, and so on. But longevity is becoming a huge issue because of the number of people living longer. A 60-year-old male, if he's doing everything right, can get 13 years, not of life expectancy, but more than their non-healthy people. So it's 13 years more than the other life expectancy. But we have between 10 and 11 years of unhealth at the end of life usually, which I call here disability. In the US, it's about 11 and a half. In the UK and Japan, as you can see here, 10.8. So about 11 years. And as Danny said this morning, 25% of Medicare costs occur in the last year of life. So you can see the opportunity, if I can call it that, to do a lot of good. We have done good in terms of managing cardiovascular disease up to now to a point. But hypertension, as you can see, causes 45% of all cardiovascular deaths. And it is rising. 80% of the elderly have hypertension. And screening is still not good enough, especially around the world. And we have the drugs. Thiazide and ACE inhibitors are particularly good for reducing not just the blood pressure, but the cardiovascular events and mortality associated with it. And as you know, the statins have done pretty well in terms of managing cholesterol and cardiovascular events and mortality. Now, I put this slide up not to blow a trumpet or anything, but to say I'm a product of two things. One, I went to medical school to learn how to detect and manage disease. And the second point was I entered the drug industry in the small molecule era where we blocked receptors and enzymes because it translated into disease constructs that we could measure. You could drop blood pressure. You could cure bacterial infections. You could treat erectile dysfunction and also decrease cholesterol. So that was terrific at the time. But you also heard this morning about the rise of molecular biology, monoclonal antibodies, and now gene therapy. That's old school, but it did good, and it's still needed. And so I've done some other things in terms of small molecules and fatty acids. And the last one is Juvenescence. And so this is the one thing that probably will be my last hurrah, so to speak. But I'm going to hand off to a wonderful team of young people who really are going to take the baton and run with this and deliver some of the medicines that we hope that we can develop in the not-too-distant future. So the first thing I asked myself, really, can aging be reversed? And I've listened to Aubrey a long time, and I'm now persuaded of that. I am also persuaded that aging as a construct is something we should all be, as physicians, as drug developers, etc., we should be passionate about fixing I mean unhealthy aging. And there are all these kind of interventions and technologies that we can access, some of which will be extraordinary, some of which are like moonshots, and others will be more incremental. But as was said this morning, there are other technologies that we need to be participant in: diagnostics, devices, apps, measurements of health management efficiency, and also we need to change our incentives. In the American healthcare system where I live, we are activity-based in terms of incentives. We get reward for identifying and treating disease. We do not get rewarded for identifying healthy people and keeping them healthy. So we have to change those incentives. And then somebody might say, well, where's the money for a drug company and keeping people healthy rather than treating disease? So we have to migrate to that new model. There are drugs in development that have been mentioned this morning, and I think Reason mentioned dasatinib is being used, and it has impact on longevity. Another paper was growth hormone, DHE, metformin, vitamin D, actually increased longevity. And you say, how do you do that? Well, you measure it by the aging clocks, the Horvath clock. Unity is being used in senolytic for osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, I think, and interstitial pulmonary fibrosis. Restore Bio, a rapalog for the treatment of immunosenescence. Our immune system declines in its efficiency as we get older, manifesting in other diseases coming through. And what they've done was a very clever thing. They actually looked at the uptake of flu vaccine in an elderly cohort and showed that it protected more. There was an antigen response and protected more than the control group in terms of susceptibility to disease. Samimed, working on the Wnt pathway, treating osteoarthritis of the knee. And we've got MitoQ, nicotine, riboside, and cell therapy with Mike West and the Scripps Clinic. But in order to get there, we don't just say, hey, we've got a disease modifier, an age modifier. We actually access it, I think, as Nir was saying this morning, through disease constructs. And these are the sort of areas where I think I can help design programs with the new technologies and measure impact in a biomarker-enabled way, and then have that dialogue with the FDA and Europeans and other agencies to at least get them to buy into the idea that you're doing something that might improve the prospects for patients that can manifest in a longer but healthier life. And my view is, if you can contract, as was said this morning, compress that time of disability from even 11 to 10 years, the benefits to society would be massive. What we're trying to do in Juvenescence is develop these treatments for both prevention and reversal. I wasn't sure that was going to be possible until I saw some of the preclinical basic data. And we would really want to build a thriving company. We have a great group of young people, and young to me is something less than 40, who are embarking on search and diligence. And we've got an emergent drug development team that are expert and experienced in developing drugs in the conventional pharma model. So we know how to deal with regulators and dialogue with them, because we've had plenty experience of, I will not call it misunderstanding, but miscommunication and alignment of expectations. So what we hope to do is participate with other companies in moving the agenda forward, where the regulators are understanding that we're all trying to do something of merit, and they've got to work with us to help regulate in a practicable way. You've seen one of the pictures. I think Laura Deming showed the left picture of a middle-aged mouse, and how altering the genome can lead to a longer lifespan and a change in the phenotype of the patient. This is another one, and we have a company that we've invested in that actually interacts with the FOXO4 P53 system, and you look, that is an aged mouse, and you perturb that system, and you do get rejuvenation. So I would think maybe there's a clue, one clue for what we might be able to do in man. And so we're developing drugs in that space. And I would hope to think there's at least a modicum of translation from these animal models. Some animal models will not translate and will learn with the passage of time. But these are the experiments we'll have to do and learn from one another. The other company that we have, which is probably the most advanced in terms of bringing something to the clinic. This is Organ Regeneration, a wonderful little company from Pittsburgh, where they actually take hepatocytes and they inject it into the abdominal lymph nodes. And they're engineered and they grow ectopic livers. And this has been shown in dogs. It does actually work, and we're preparing to go into the clinic in man. Why are we doing that? Well, first of all, the number of liver transplants in a year in the United States is just now about 8,000, and it's about to grow dramatically because of the increased incidence of non-alcoholic steatohepatitis and cirrhosis and so on. And each transplant costs $700,000. If you multiply that by 8,000 going up, you've got a big price tag that you've got to pay for healthcare. If this could mitigate some of those transplants, you will have a benefit. It's quite easy to understand. And so we were showing that this is a company we have half ownership of. They're barreling along the road to the clinic, and I have to say they're a fantastic team of people. Now, just in finishing up, to say that we are a drug development company. We have capital, we're raising more, at least Jim and Greg are raising more, and building up, and we see great opportunities. We are, I won't call it agnostic, but we have a very broad purview over technologies that might actually bear fruit. We have a very good search and diligence team who set a high bar. We don't just take in anything. So we have a huge amount of failure in terms of that which doesn't make it. As I said, we have got a young team, but we also have an ecosystem of longevity experts and drug development experts that we can bring to bear. So when a company that we acquire or a group of people, a technology we acquire, we fill the gaps. And so we are a kind of, although we've got the capital to invest, we are principally a drug development company. The other point I'd make is when I was talking about health, in the future, we're not talking about patients. I believe we should be talking about pre-patients. All of you here who don't have a disease and you want not to get it, there should be some strategy that you adopt for yourselves and indeed for your family. When do you start? Now is a good time to start managing the parameters you know that predict for ill health. We go to our annual physician review, which in this country, I've been to many of them, are not very good. And I think we really need to up our game in screening. And we need to have broader biomarkers that we actually incorporate into our annual health screening. And it should be personalized. Our genetics are different, so our propensities are different. So a degree of personalized prevention, I think, is where we should be headed as well, to manage these growing healthcare costs. And finally, in our company, we are ambitious. We think that we can do it. We've got a lot of companies under our purview now, and we're going to acquire more. We'll need more capital, and eventually we'll IPO. Thank you very much. Sure.